Friends, recently I have read an article from the Irish Times which informs that even though the global obesity is regularly presented as one of the biggest crises in the headlines, there is nowadays also another global issue and is growing at a very fast rate. The newspaper says that there are now up to 2.5 billion people in the world diagnosed with what we call myopia, which is more commonly known as short-sightedness. It is even estimated that that number will rise to around 5 billion people by 2050. Myopia affects around half of young adults in Europe and in the States, and even up to 90% of teenagers in Asia. The article states that myopia, if not treated accordingly, it is not only a life inconvenience, but it's also a very serious health risk. Finally, they make known to the readers how the kids and adults who have that condition should be treated and how to help them to understand how to prevent it as well. Right, so let me suggest something else now. You see, as myopia, or as we call it, short-sightedness, might affect our vision so severely that only the objects nearby or a short distance away are clear for us, but everything else far away is blurred and really hard to recognize, the very same thing can happen to our spiritual vision. You see, that is the very disease which affected this particular servant about whom we hear from Jesus' parable in today's Gospel. The man was asked by the king to settle the accounts, which rightly so belonged to the king. And the servant's job was one only, to look after the king's property. But not only he missed to do so, but also the servant lost most of the money entrusted to him by his superior. How the situation was settled? Well, you know the parable as I do. The servant made a terrible scene, asking only for a bit more time, and he would settle his enormous debt. But not only the king agreed on that, but he treated his servant with surpassing forgiveness. He cancelled the whole debt altogether, 10,000 talents. Can you imagine? 10,000 talents. It doesn't sound very clear how much he owed, but just imagine this. One big biblical talent was enough money to consider some person a rich. So what about 10,000 talents? It was like 60 million denarii, which was like 60 million days of work. So easy to understand that it was an astronomical amount of money, a debt no one ever could forgive. And that's the story Jesus gives as an answer to Peter this very Sunday, when Peter asks the Lord, "How often do I must forgive, Lord, if my brother wrongs me?" The answer given by Jesus is very simple and yet very symbolic. Not 7, I tell you, but 77 times. Not 7, but 77. And so in this beautiful number, there is hidden all good what the Lord has forgiven us like. Just think how greatly the king treated his stewards, how much debt he was going to free him from. All this to teach him to become more gentle towards his fellow servants. And yet, even having learned of the heaviness of his own debt and of the greatness of the king, the greatness of his forgiveness, how does he behave when he is asked by his fellow worker to delay the debt? The first one, the servant, seizes him by the throat. Not only he rejects the plea to wait, but also he sells his fellow worker wife and his children. All of that is given to us by Jesus, the parable, for one purpose only, to remember constantly how good the Lord is to each one of us. So he forgives our immense debts, but he also expects that we, on our part, must forgive from the few minor faults that others have committed against us. And I am coming back now to the disease called myopia, short-sightedness, which I talked about in the beginning. You see, to be short-sighted is one thing. We can get lenses, can get some comfortable glasses, even fancy frames. Sometimes, if you're lucky, a laser treatment, and everything is clean then. But how to treat myopia, short-sightedness, which affects our souls, our inner selves? How to see and how to feel deeper that what is not just nearby and clear, but what is far and at a distance, how to see it? The answer to that is given today by Jesus. He says, unless you each forgive your brother from your heart, unless you forgive each one of your brother from your heart. So we are to be merciful as our Father in heaven is merciful. Why? Because as Paul reminds us in today's epistle, we are the Lord's. We belong to Him. Each one of us has been purchased by the blood of Christ Jesus, shed for each one of us on the very cross. And the mercy, His forgiveness, and the forgiveness we should show to others should be the heartfelt expression of our gratitude for the mercy, forgiveness Jesus purchased for us. And the honest gratitude to the Lord, which we multiply in our prayer, daily prayer, in our heart, is the perfect remedy for any early symptoms of myopia, short-sightedness of our hearts. May God bless you, and see you next week. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my Sunday sermon, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to share it with others. God bless you.